What is up, everybody? This is Brian, the Tailgate Tour Guide, and it has been a long time since I've done this, but I want to give you guys a bit of a fleet update. It's been forever since I've even uploaded a video to this channel. I think the last video was probably about the BMW when I was doing some repairs on it, but I figured I would take a little bit of time to kind of walk around and show you guys some of the cars that I have, tell you a quick story about them, and kind of give the update on what's running and what's not. So let's go ahead and check it out. All right, so this is my oldest and probably my most unique car in the fleet, and this is a 1982 Toyota Celica. Not a Celica Supra, just a Toyota Celica. This is a car that I've had for probably over 10 years now. Before that, the previous owner autocrossed this car. That was pretty much all that it ever did in its life. It had been probably retired from a road-going car for many years. It was basically trailered to every event with sticky tires and stuff like that. And since I've had it, I've just really only improved upon what the previous owner had done. We just put some freshened up parts. There's some better wheels that are on here. I've got a street tire 200 tread wear on it now. This is a 22R carbureted engine, but the nice thing about it now is it actually has a 20R head, which is an earlier Toyota cylinder head, which is supposed to be better flowing. It's been machined a little bit, but everything else is stock as far as the cams and stuff. But interestingly enough, we do actually have, there we go, working on the broken plastic door handles on this thing, so apologies for the mess. But what is unique about this is not just stock. It does have Mikuni side draft carbs, Doug Thorley headers. This has got a limited slip differential. We've got Koni suspension, which is old school stuff. You can actually see the Koni sway bar way down in there. And a lot of that stuff was done by the previous owner before me. I've only just kind of made some tweaks and mods along the way. But this thing runs and drives great right now. Of course, it's got its old car problems. We've got rust, we've got some dents, we've got the hatch that leaks and everything, but this car is over 40 years old. There's not really a whole lot that you can be upset about. And as I said, right now I'm working on fixing door handles, as the back sides of these tend to break and it makes it where the handle doesn't work. Right now I think I've got it fixed, but who knows, it's probably going to break again. But yeah, that is the 82 Celica. All right, so now, strangely enough, this is the next newest vehicle in the Toyota fleet, and this is currently, at least, this is my 1992 Toyota Previa. These are known for being a mid-engine, rear-wheel drive, kind of a spaceship of a car. I feel like everybody has had at least one of these in their family at some point, or has had friends that had one. But I love this thing. I paid $600 for this forever ago, running and driving with dry rotted tires. Moved it all the way from Kingsport, Tennessee to Asheville, and this was pre-pandemic, so this was like 2019. And the cool part was, before I started really doing a whole lot of work on this, as I was doing a whole lot of work on this is when the pandemic broke out, and I was able to get a lot of stuff done. These are actually RAV4 wheels. These are 90s era RAV4 wheels. I'm a huge fan of the 3-spoke style. Window tint, I actually lowered it and put fresh suspension on, kind of went through and fixed up the AC. Believe it or not, this thing's a mess in here right now as well. It's kind of my pickup truck, but we've got a stereo. There's a little subwoofer that's underneath the seat. Nothing that's crazy, but just kind of makes it a fun daily driver. But what we did with this van, after I kind of went through it and fixed all the oil leaks, asterisk at that time, oil leaks, is that was when COVID happened, and it was kind of unique. I was able to take some time off, and we took about 2 weeks to go to California. And so we drove this car from Asheville, North Carolina to Los Angeles and back over 2 weeks. Did well over, 5,000 or 6,000 miles or something in that time frame. And minus this thing just not having great AC in the deserts, it was a fantastic vehicle for me and my family. Right beside it, this is my latest project update on the fleet. This is my 1995 Toyota 4Runner. This had previously been to Windrock. Windrock is an off-road park in Tennessee, and it was my first time going, and I definitely want to go back, but we had a not so gnarly part of the trail, and this thing is very high-centered, and we ended up doing a very slow roll. Unfortunately, it was also with me and my family, but a very slow roll, tipped over on its side, sat there for a few hours. You can see we're just kind of pushed in here and here. Luckily, though, we did not shatter this glass, because I don't know how easy it would be to replace that with a 95. This is, again, a second-gen 4Runner, 2-inch lift, 33-inch tires, custom rock sliders. This is not a custom rear bumper. I think it's Off-Road Solutions or something like that. rear bumper. But when the rollover happened, you can see there's a little bit of creasing on the front fender here as well. But when the rollover happened, engine oil went in all kinds of places in the engine it's not supposed to be. And so when we tried to get it back on its wheels and got it running again, it did not run. If anything, even once we cleared out the cylinders out there on the trail, once we got it all cleared up and tried to get it running again, it was just knocking like crazy. So engine locked up, wasn't good anymore. Had to get it towed all the way out of Windrock and to my house all the way here in Asheville, well, Waynesville now. But the cool thing is, just got this back up and running a few weeks ago, and this is now rocking a 3.4 liter V6 that is out of the 3rd gen 4Runners, which I was going to do the whole swap by myself, and I ran out of time and energy, and let a local legend help me out, and he basically did all the work on getting this thing back in and running, and I basically just had to supply all the wiring harness and all the stuff that I had accrued on getting this done. So now this thing has, somewhere around, I don't know, 180 horsepower versus 140 horsepower. So, definitely a huge bump, since the 3.0 liters in these older Toyotas are terribly anemic. They are some of the worst engines around when it comes to power, and they have head gasket problems, which is kind of well known. Those and the Supra straight sixes before that. But anywho, this thing is awesome. It definitely has its fair share of body rust. It's certainly not clean. This had over fenders, which basically covered most of this, but I knew it was getting pretty bad under here, so I just removed the over fenders, and I'm in the process of trying to at least stop it and treat it. Although the good news is the underside of this thing is actually pretty good. There's not any really like frame rot or anything like that, just a typical little surface rust on little things here and there. Previously, when I got this car, this is another vehicle I paid like $500 for, but it barely ran. It needed a clutch, and it drove, but it needed a clutch. The tires were cupped, the suspension was worn. There's a lot of just issues with it, but it did run and drive. And minus the motor swap, I've put definitely a couple thousand, I don't know, 3,000-4,000 in it with little parts here and there, just to make it a little bit of an off-road toy. But I love this thing. It's unique because it's a manual transmission 4Runner, which is really what I fell in love with, because it's just so much fun. Maybe an automatic is better for off-roading in some instances, but I don't know. For me, I like it. Now going into my next Toyota, so you can see we've kind of been on the Toyota train for a little while now. This is my 2000 Toyota Celica GTS, and I freaking love this car. I used to bag on these cars my whole entire life, kind of like a Miata. I just kind of assumed that this was a chick car, which I realize is a totally unrealistic thing to think about these cars, or any car for that matter, especially since I've got a totally different opinion on Miata since then. But this is a car that was actually trade-in at the dealership. Sold it to a friend of mine. He was actually looking for one just like this. It's a manual transmission, and he had it for a short time. Wasn't really comfortable driving the clutch every day with a bad knee. So he said, "Hey, Brian, why don't you try to help me sell this car, and I'll give you a portion of the proceeds just for helping me out," because he honestly hates doing stuff like that. And I was like, "Yeah, sure, I'll drive it around for a few days, take some photos of it, and I'll see what I can do to kind of help you out." Well, I'm pretty sure he knew exactly what he was doing when he wanted me to help him sell it, because he was wanting me to buy it from him, I think is really what it came down to. So he hooked me up with a pretty good price on it, which I was really happy. This was like a 2-owner car before we got it. It had like 180 or 70,000 miles when I got it from him. Now it actually has like over 190,000 miles, and it freaking runs great. I did a video recently, which nobody watched. We'll see if somebody watches this, but it was kind of showing the service videos and what they do at the dealership, and there was like no oil leaks. This thing was in really tip-top shape, and you can see this is not stock anymore. I've put GR86 wheels on it. You guys have actually seen this car in the GR86 video I made about 6 months or so ago. And just recently I found a replica TRD kit for this car, which is the Action package. This was an optional body kit that they had for the Toyota Celicas during this era. But I've always wanted to find one. They were really kind of hard to find. And so I found the fiberglass replica and had it painted up and just fitted it recently. So it's a little bit riced out, and that's kind of what I like. Is just, I feel like these Celicas look really good with just a little bit of work done to them. Smoked out taillights, slightly upgraded headlights, which have some black housings to them. And then typical stuff that I always like to do in all my cars is it's got an Apple CarPlay Android Auto stereo in there. Got 2 10-inch subs in the back, but really simple setup. The subs are actually ones that I've used in an MR2 I had. I don't know, 10, 15 years ago now. So it's kind of leftover parts I've kept in my shed for a long time. But this is like my favorite daily driver I could have because it's fun to drive. It handles way better than I give it credit, or anybody gives them credit for. This car has definitely held its own in several cases. And now that it's got the body kit on there, everything's kind of blacked out and looks good. Definitely imperfections everywhere. You know, if you look into the paint, there's all kinds of rock chips and stuff. I mean, it's a 190,000 mile car. It gets parked outside. It is what it is, but it's a super fun daily driver. So that's my 2000 Celica GTS, of course, manual transmission as well. Freaking love this thing. Definitely one of the best cars you could have. So clearly I've got a little bit of a theme going on with some sports cars. So now going to the next newest car, and we're going to break character a little bit. This is my 2013, it's really my wife's car, but it's a 2013 Infiniti G37S. Obviously, this is the sedan variant. And the really cool part about this car is everything, honestly. I had a 2003 G35 sedan. It was a sport as well that I had. My wife and I got together. It was a manual transmission car and one of the best. I've always loved four-door sedans, four-door sports sedans at least. And when the opportunity came up for one of these, and my wife kind of fell in love with the Infinitis after I had mine, this thing was awesome. It was a one owner. We bought it in 2018, I think it was. It only had like 98,000 miles on it. Now it has a little over 155. And this has actually been one of the most reliable cars I've ever owned. It's due for some maintenance, like some belts and stuff like that, just stuff that a 150,000 mile car is going to need. But like batteries, I don't even think we put brakes on this thing. Because this is an S, it has the upgraded Akebono brakes, which is kind of like a Brembo setup, if you will, that type of performance brake. And as you can see, we've done a little bit with it, some mild aesthetics with lips, and we've done some chrome delete stuff, painted the chrome on the front, did some carbon fiber on the mirrors, carbon fiber vinyl to kind of black out the chrome around there. Those are 370 wheels. It's lowered on Swift springs, carbon fiber spoiler, nothing really super serious. Muffler delete just kind of makes it sound good, drive good. And man, this car is fantastic. It's just one of the best all-around cars we've had. My wife gets compliments on it every single day. And the fun part is she drives this car around and she picked out a lot of the modifications on this car, and everybody thinks it's a dude that's driving it until they see it's a chick, and it blows their mind. So going from 2013, you can now see we have my absolute gem 2014 Toyota FJ Cruiser. This is kind of my wife's second vehicle, but I am so happy to have infused this in her because when she was thinking about getting a second car, she'd only had one. And here I am having multiple cars and old stuff and projects. And she was kind of like, hey, I wouldn't mind getting a second car, and maybe we should get an SUV before I had the 4Runner. And she was kind of going on a Jeep kick. And I was like, man, I really just, I like the idea of a Wrangler, but I don't want to actually own one. So when I was able to kind of talk her into an FJ, this thing was also a dealer trade-in at the lot, popped up, and it's a 14 FJ. It's a Trail Teams Ultimate Edition, which is the last year that they had the Trail Teams Edition. This is effectively a TRD Pro FJ Cruiser. It's got TRD suspension, which actually has a slight lift to it. You can see in here barely. I don't know if I'm going to be able to really get in there, but it's got a slight suspension lift from the factory. The TRD wheels, I put the 285s on there, which is almost a 33-inch tire. Stock everything else, though. We haven't done a thing to this, just kept it clean. And this was kind of an interesting trade. This car had been sitting outside of the previous owner's home for like 2 years. It was under a tree. It was covered in tree sap. It was smelled of rat urine and stuff like that. It had flat tires that were also cupped. It was just in really terrible shape. The battery had gone dead. It didn't run. And so when the used car manager traded it in, it was just covered in grime and filth and all of the old pollen stuff that just kind of turns the mold. It looked disgusting. And he was going to wholesale it. And I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And it's got 130-something thousand miles when we got it. So he was like, well, that's definitely a wholesale piece. It's going to take us a lot of money to get it back up and running. And, who knows what it's going to need and what the smell is. And I was like, whoa, 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 let me buy this. I was like, I'll put a battery in it. If it cranks up and runs, I'll fix the rest. So he's like, deal. So I got a pretty good deal on this. And this was during the COVID era. So thankfully I was able to score an FJ at a reasonable price. I say reasonable because still paying $20,000-$30,000 for these cars when they're, 10 plus years old just blows my mind, especially with the miles on them. But this has been fantastic. This is the main reason why I will never own a newer 4Runner, even though I talk about them in my videos. This is the best parts of a 4Runner. It's got the 4-liter. It's got pretty much the same suspension, but it's got so much better character. Not everybody can really daily drive these things because they do have some awkward and awful blind spots back here. And there's technically a backup camera on this, but it's super small and only in the mirror. It's kind of old school Toyota technology. The Bluetooth works, but it's kind of lame. But it's just such a great car to drive. My wife actually just recently took this on a road trip to Wisconsin and back, and does fantastic. I mean, didn't have any problems at all. And I wasn't really expecting that to be a problem, honestly, anyway, just because it's such a good car. But one of my favorites, I've actually, ever since I've even been interested in off-roading and, 4Runners and 4x4s, ever since you're a kid and you're into trucks, me being a Toyota guy, I have always loved these FJ Cruisers. And I was kind of hoping when I worked at the Toyota dealership that maybe I was going to get one, but that was at the point when I learned just how crazy the pricing is on these cars. And that's why I'm still so happy to have one now. This is like one of my bucket list realistic dream cars, and I'm happy that my wife drives it every day and I can crank it up whenever I want to as well. You got the quirky, 3 wipers and everything. It's just so awesome. I'm sure it's locked, but fantastic car. So kind of bringing it home to my last 2 vehicles. I kind of got out of order with one as far as the years, but I'll come back to it. But my baby currently, it's kind of been in a video before with the GR Corolla, but this is my 2015 BMW M3. This is the F80 chassis, and it has the illustrious manual transmission, which is what I fell in love with. As I said before, I have always loved a manual 4-door sedan. For a performance thing, I just think it strikes the perfect balance of functionality, performance, and man, I don't care who you are, this generation of BMW is one of the best looking cars that I think has ever been put up by that brand. I'm still not really on board with the new G80s and G82s with the big vertical pig snot, pig nostril grills. I know the performance is there. It would smoke this thing in every capacity, but this is just one of the best styling. And if you can't tell, I have a propensity to gravitate to blue, and I love this color. It's called Yas, Y-A-S, Marina Blue, which is named after a racetrack, a racing circuit. And they use this color blue in some of their racetrack design. And this is actually another trade-in. This is another wholesale save at the Fred Anderson lot. So this was traded in with like 142,000 miles, give or take. And it's a 2015, so obviously very high miles for a BMW. It had crappy tires. The brakes were making noise. Basically, previous owner had it for a few months, had his fun with it, and was ready to move on. Before that, it was in Kentucky. It was in Connecticut. And that was where all the miles had really been put on with this car. And when I saw the ownership history and I saw it had a lot of BMW maintenance, at the time I actually had a F30 BMW. These are all some of my cars. So I had this black F30 BMW, which was a turbo 4-cylinder and a 6-speed manual as well. And is very much related to this chassis, but obviously at the other end of the spectrum when it comes to performance and everything. So I already had a little bit of trust and confidence in the BMWs. Because of this car, and was wanting to modify it and do more to it. So when this car became available, I knew I had to have it. It was probably one of the worst financial decisions I've ever made because it has not been reliable. I would say actually overall it's been reliable. We're looking at 162-ish thousand miles now. So I have put 20,000 miles on it in almost 2 years, which means I am driving it. I am taking it out of town for events. I'm taking it to my car meets and car shows. It gets driven. Actually, it's not been autocrossed yet, but I need to. I'd like to autocross it. Usually if I'm autocrossing, it's with the Celica here. In all reality, it's just set up more for it. This car is a little big and heavy, but I freaking love this car. I don't know what my next car would be after this, because while I do wish I had a car that didn't have as high mileage as this car, because you do run that risk of every single day, worrying of what's going to be the next engine chime you're going to hear and the next part to break. But honestly, all that just kind of goes away. You think about that when you don't drive it for a few days. You're like, oh man, I should go get a GR Corolla. Or we had this Golf GTI on the lot that had like 28,000 miles on it. It was such a good car. But every time I get in this car and drive it, whether it's on a long highway trip or on the back roads, it's just such a fantastic car to drive. And I have a hard time thinking of anything I'd want to do to replace this. So there's going to be a time where I'm going to have to figure that out. But as of right now, I plan to keep this car for a while. I mean, I wouldn't say this is like a dream car of mine. It was an opportunity that I took, but this has been awesome. It's pretty much stock. It's got newer tires on it. I've replaced all that and gone through the brakes, and I've had to do some maintenance items. Not long after I bought it, there was fuel injectors and all kinds of stuff I had to do, but recently it's been pretty good. It just is basically lowered with some wheel spacers. So mostly stock, and with the high miles, I plan to keep it that way. And then last but not least is my one motorcycle. So this is a 2001, I think, Honda Shadow. This is a Sabre, which basically means it's the 1100cc big boy kind of. I think when I was reading some reviews or some advertisements for this bike, they called it the Honda Muscle Bike. I don't know. I can't come up with these marketing terms. But they say that because it's got a lower gear ratio on the Sabres compared to some of the other Honda Classics and things like that. So it's supposed to have a torquier first and second gear. So it kind of gives it some off-the-line grunt. But definitely a quick bike for a cruiser. I don't know the specs on it, how much horsepower. This was actually another trade-in from my previous employer when I worked over at the Ford dealership where I got started making the videos. But this was another kind of situation, another wholesale save. Didn't run, had a bad battery, and just like the FJ, I said, hey, let me throw a battery in it and see what it does. And worst case scenario, I lost battery money. But I put a battery in it, it ran mostly okay, so I was like, yeah, I'll go ahead and buy it. So it had a lot of this stuff done to it. It had these Cobra exhaust pipes on there, which are stupid loud. I actually had to buy silencers for them, which I think are still in there. I don't know. I need to inspect that once I get off. I think there's silencers in there. Hopefully I haven't lost one. It had this, weird little intake thing, which is really a fake deal, but just a lot of chrome dress-up stuff. You got the highway bars, the floorboards, the rear floorboards. It had been lowered. I'd since raised it. I added the saddlebags, added the seat, upgraded the grips, and upgraded the headlights to LEDs. But this bike has been great. It only has 13,000 miles on it, which is nothing at all for a 2001. So that's a 23-year-old motorcycle and only has 13,000 miles. And honestly, I think it had 7 on it when I got it. So I've almost doubled the miles on it in the, 4 or 5 years that I've had it. But I've loved it. Had a motorcycle before this one, and I think I'm a cruiser guy all day long. So yeah, that's kind of the big picture on the fleet here. So I know what you're probably thinking. I have a problem. And yes, I do. I have a problem. I am a car hoarder. Thankfully, as of right now, which is why I decided to make this video, everything here runs. I don't have a project car here at the moment that is non-functional. Everything runs. For the longest time, the 4Runner was down. The Celica here behind me goes in and out of commission while I do stuff. Right now, I can crank it up and drive it. I just have the door handle off. But right now, everything runs, so all the project cars are up and running. And I'm not going to lie, this is part of my motivation for selling as many cars as I need to. Not only do I have to support my family, but I can't stand let these things sit around. I like to have everything up and running, and I'm trying to not take on other stuff. But as you can kind of see, I've got a wide spread of stuff that I'm into. I really do love my older Toyotas. You can see, I'll bring it over here to my picture wall again. Looking at the cars, I've been to Tail of Dragon and stuff, but that was my 87 MR2 I had for a long time. You can see on this photo here, this was a 91 MR2 that I had with a motor swap. There's the same MR2 that I had. There's my older motorcycle. There's the Celica. There's my G35. There's the new BMW that I've got and the older one. But really the main thing is I like to have a spread. I'm a motorholic. I like to do everything that you can do with driving. I like to off-road when I get time. I like to ride the motorcycle. I love autocrossing when I have time. I love driving the mountains. I love road tripping. I love doing all that stuff. And every single one of these cars scratches an itch. The Celica here, the black Celica, is kind of the fun daily driver. The Previa is my pickup truck, honestly. The 4Runner kind of doubles up now that it's running, but if we need to haul stuff, we take the Previa. It was obviously a road trip vehicle. I would do that trip again, and it would honestly just run perfectly the whole time. The 4Runner is obviously the off-roader, but it's reliable enough that it could be driven every day as well if I just wanted to suffer my way through fuel economy. Of course, my wife has the Infiniti and the FJ, so she's got kind of her fun daily driver and kind of the fun, unique car. And then of course the BMW M3 here is kind of the looker. It's the one that, you know, everybody wants to ask about, and, you know, everything there. It's the one I take to my car meets and all of that. So, you know, it's a wide spread of things here, but certainly am a Toyota guy at heart, if you can't tell. I mean, I've got all over this garage all kinds of Toyota stuff. I mean, good Lord, I've got busted Toyota wheels, a couple of them that I've had from cars and wrecks and stuff in the past. I've got Toyota posters. A buddy of mine framed an MR2 magazine article from way back in the day and gave it to me as a gift. So that's why I am Brian the Toyota guy. I've always been known for these Toyotas, but as I've kind of grown up and been able to experience other cars, I've always loved to have these, you know, modern-esque, you know, luxury sedans, sports sedans, if you will. And Toyota just doesn't have that. They've gotten close with the GR Corolla, but it's missing out on the luxury, and it's a $40,000 to $45,000 car versus this F80 with the miles and everything I paid like close to like 32. So, you know, even I don't even think you can buy a pre-owned GR Corolla for $32,000 yet. So that's mainly why I haven't made the jump in anything newer, is honestly just because I have so much money flowing with all this stuff here. I don't have room for another car payment or a bigger car payment, but I'm very happy with these cars. I'm kind of, you know, happy to share a little bit of my life with you guys. I don't even know who's watching this video or not. Algorithm's probably gonna hate it, but I figured it's been a minute since I've kind of gotten personal with you guys and shown, you know, what I'm into and what I like. But yeah, as always, thanks for watching.